Hello, and welcome to episode 30 of Privacy Laws, where I, Donata Strink-Skilbert, speak with amazing privacy professionals, and we have some laughs along the way as well. Today, I'll be speaking with Paul Crafer and Esther Chung about viewing privacy through a harmonized governance lens. Paul is the Vice President of Services at Assess Intelligence with a mission of eliminating governance gaps and ensuring that critical sectors can scale technology in a way that is both secure and responsible. Paul spent over a decade at Apple and has over 20 years' experience in business development, pivoting to pursue a meaningful impact in the field of AI governance, risk, and compliance. Esther is the Chief Privacy and Risk Officer at Assess Intelligence. She's an attorney licensed in New York, an advisory board member of the International Association of Privacy Professionals, and a non resident fellow at the Cornell Brooks Center on Global Democracy. Esther holds the AIGP, CIPPE, CIPP-US, and CIPM certifications. Both Paul and Esther are For Humanity Fellows, contributing to independent audit frameworks aligned with the EU AI Act, GDPR, NIST, and ISO standards. So, Paul and Esther, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Donata.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you for that nice introduction.
Absolutely. Can you give us a bit of a background to the company that you worked for, as Assess Intelligence?
Yeah, sure, of course. Happy to. I'll take this one. First of all, pleasure to be here. A moment of truth and honesty. I did have to ask Esther just before we came online where LOLs comes from. Forgive me, I probably just a little bit too old to get the joke, but okay, now I get it. So we can have a bit of fun with the wording, right? At Assessed Intelligence, we're a specialized advisory firm. We're kind of built on a conviction for working within a high stakes environment. So our kind of underlying principles are trust, credibility, discipline, right? That's because we operate where the cost of failure is highest. We're in cybersecurity, obviously a very mature discipline and domain, but we've got many, many years within cybersecurity. We're in AI governance. We're in highly regulated sectors such as defense tech, healthcare, financial services, public administration, and just recently construction. So within those areas, what we're doing is we're looking at how organizations, they seem to stumble into compliance and governance through some kind of form of theater. And I honestly think that platforms like LinkedIn have kind of almost contributed to this, right? Because people want to be seen to be doing the right thing. And they want to be ticking boxes and saying, yeah, we're good. And if you look on LinkedIn and you see some of the posts and, yeah, we're compliant with that, we're compliant with this, and you go to trust sites like trust.companyname.com, and they've got all the little badges everywhere, right? The one that makes me laugh is the GDPR badge. Who gave you that badge? Nobody gives out GDPR badges, right? Who gave you that badge? It is a theater, right? So, what we want to do is we want to overcome that theater and operationalize what companies really should have for compliance with the structural integrity and capability. So within that area, we work on integrity, we work on mission-first dedication and adaptability. So right across the board, we're looking at, you mentioned them, we're in with NIST, we're in with ISO, we're in on CMMC audits, we're doing SOC 2 compliance, we're doing EU AI Act. I'm not going to say compliance because hardly anybody's complying with it right now. We're in GDPR compliance, state laws for privacy. At one point, we were even in doing, the bias law from New York City, but I don't think anybody bothers with that anymore either. So, we're kind of adapting as the laws change and as kind of companies decide where they want to comply with. But our goal is to create that high level compliance, right through the organization.
I think it's interesting. It's interesting that you're mentioning theater. One of the things that I do for my job, and this is totally unrelated, is vendor due diligence. So when you go to the company's about page, it's all about how they're a family and everything's great. We all get along. We all work together. And then you go read their Glassdoor pages, which is like company reviews from employees, and it paints a completely different picture. And I think it's very similar in compliance. We're on their website, we're GDPR compliant, we're CPRA compliant, we're compliant with this, we're compliant with that. And then you start looking into their documentation and it has, they're not compliant at all. I mean, your privacy policy doesn't even list the GDPR rights. So I think it's very true that there is some kind of theater going on of these companies presenting themselves as very compliant, have everything together, they're ready to help you comply with laws or do these things. But then in reality, they have nothing set up. So I totally can resonate with that.
Sure.
Yeah. So you have just released a publicly available governance and assurance model called the Arise framework. And when you showed me the framework, honestly, I could not believe that it was publicly available because there's so much work that went into it and it's so comprehensive and there's so much that you can do with it. We'll talk about the Arise framework, but can you just very briefly tell us what it is?
Sure, absolutely. You're right. It's publicly available. You can go to ariseframework.com right now, and all you need is an email, and you can access it. There are multiple views and dozens of controls that you can work through and um, um, compliance processes that you can approach across a whole range of frameworks and regulations. Um, Essentially, what it is, it's the foundation for how assessed intelligence delivers value to organizations. And we wanted to make it free because alignment really shouldn't be kind of restricted to the people that can afford the biggest bills with the big four, right? Alignment should be something that we all share and we support together, and compliance should be something we all support and share together. And then in order to make it really real, in order to kind of bring it to that high level of operational rigor, then you can bring in people like assessed intelligence, or you can use it internally yourself to lift up your policies and practices. So essentially it's a one-stop shop, right? It's not an additional framework to add to all the other frameworks out there. It's a single pane of glass to view all the existing frameworks that some of your company might be working on already. You might have somebody sitting within the privacy office working on GDPR or state privacy law compliance. You might have somebody sitting over in the Security Council working on cybersecurity, CMMC or SOC 2 compliance. Never the twain shall meet, right? So this single pane of glass is the ability for everybody to sit behind the window and look at the same things at the same time. It's unifying all of those frameworks so that people can work together on these things. So that's essentially what Arise is. And we gave it a nice moniker because, I mean, that's branding nowadays, right? But really what it stands for is assurance of responsible, innovative and secure environments. And one of the things that Josh, our CEO, said when Esther and I first joined, because Esther and I joined pretty much on the same day, I think, was that there is no responsible technology without secure technology. So from the ground up, it was all about having a secure environment and then building a responsible environment on top of that so that you could have an innovative environment so that emerging technologies could then bloom within organizations. And it's similar to the kind of the mandate that For Humanity works under. So it's about making sure that you're mitigating the risks in order to maximize the upside. So that's pretty much what it is. I mean, if you were to kind of look for a one-liner in a motto, it's a website that has loads and loads of frameworks mapped into it by humans over hours and hours and hours and hours. That's what it is.
That will definitely save a lot of people a lot of time and a lot of effort because just trying to look all this stuff up and trying to map it together is, as you know, an absolute nightmare. So, having that already in place and knowing that somebody already did that for you is absolutely huge. Moving on to you, Esther, can you tell us a bit about For Humanity and its mission?
Sure. For Humanity is a nonprofit, and we're dedicated to building an infrastructure of trust for AI, autonomous, and algorithmic systems, something we call AAA systems. And our mission is to use a crowdsourced process to move away from what are vague ethical principles and toward rigorous and reliable binary audit criteria to ensure that AI is safe, fair, and accountable. And we also provide free instruction on these audit criteria, as well as access to a robust body of knowledge. And we currently rely on just about 3,000 volunteers. I think we hit 3,000 quite recently. And these volunteers are spread across 101 countries. At this time, anyone can join as a volunteer. All we ask that is you provide an email address to register and sign a code of conduct to join our Slack channel.
Very cool. So, what types of projects have you worked on as a fellow at For Humanity?
So both Paul and I have spent quite a lot of time drafting these binary independent audit criteria for AI systems, and it's actually where we first met. We've also contributed to the body of knowledge, and we've worked on policy accelerators, which are essentially like regulatory sandboxes in which we partner with corporations to take our audit criteria from what theory to practical audit. And this year, I will also be serving as the chair of the Curriculum Oversight Board. And for that role, I will be assisting the executive director on curriculum development and the credentialing process. And I think Paul can also speak to some of the experience he's had as well.
Yeah, and there are 66 fellows worldwide, and there's a board of 6 people, and then you've got around about 3,000 contributors, and these are people that turn up in daily or weekly meetings around personal data privacy, cybersecurity, AI in healthcare, AI in education, AI literacy, cognitive bias, ethics. I mean, the list just goes on. The channels within the Slack community and the amount of written word and documents that have been created over the years For Humanity is just incredible. And the robustness of that content is just remarkable. You've got people who lead organizations like JTC 42 that are dealing with the EU AI Act harmonize standards. He's was on one of the founding board members at For Humanity. The lady that runs the CAIDP, Merv Hickok, the executive director at CAIDP, she's a fellow at For Humanity, right? So this is not a fringe organization. This is experts and pioneers through the years that have been kind of leading the charge for mitigating the risks of AI systems. And I think both Esther and I are super, super happy to be able to further that mission as well in this small way that we do. Just recently, we've been working on a new data protection scheme for Dubai, which looks like it's going to be approved by the Data Commissioner. And we're also convening new working groups, one for Nigeria, which is for data, again, based on the Data Protection Act 2023, together with the local Data Commissioner's office. And also, just getting off the ground this year is going to be an online child safety project in Ghana, which is going to start in Ghana with local partners. All of these are always run with local partners. This is not UK or US or Western European or Western Hemisphere people coming in and telling people what to do. This is driven by local partners. So there's people in Dubai, there's people in Ghana, there's people in Nigeria that are driving these projects, and we support them. So it's really exciting.
That's really cool. Yeah, it makes me think of the work that we do at the American Bar Association at the Rule of Law Initiative, which also, can get grants or go into other countries to help them set up, different laws or frameworks or train judges or train prosecutors, of trying to ensure that the rule of law stays up. And they do some work on internet freedom as well. I participated in some of it in East Asia. And it's really cool. It's really fun, and it's really interesting because you get to meet a lot of different people and share ideas and just help improve things, which is just a great place to be and a great thing to do, to work with people.
It's very satisfying. It feels very purposeful. As you said at the beginning, I spent over 10 years at Apple, and at the time, the world's most admired company, the world's most profitable company, and yet I've never felt as purposeful as I do now. So you can really see the difference.
Absolutely. So let's get into our main topic for today, which is viewing privacy through a harmonized governance lens. For any listeners that may be new to this topic, what does it mean to say that privacy professionals are working in a silo?
When we say that privacy professionals are working in a silo, what we mean is that they're pretty much operating on an island in isolation. So privacy professionals have all the responsibility for compliance, but often very little visibility into the actual machinery of the company. So what you have is something like where the team responsible for protecting the personal data works completely independently from other departments, like, for instance, cybersecurity or IT that actually handle that data. They might have entirely different processes. They might be operating with entirely different frameworks. They might be trying to comply with different laws or regulations or standards. And you can see where problems might start to arise.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a problem that strikes a lot of companies, where privacy professionals are just, sitting in their own box and away from everybody else. So what types of problems do companies run into when they handle privacy, AI, cybersecurity, and data governance separately?
Oh my gosh, so many problems. Okay, so where do we begin? First, you can have a conflict of goals across teams. So you have privacy that wants to minimize data, while data science wants to maximize data because more data makes for better models. And so without harmonization, you can get this tug of war that ends up stalling process across the entire company. You can also have a language barrier, right? Because they have different backgrounds, they're speaking with different words, they're using different frameworks. The lawyer might be talking about GDPR Article 25, which is data protection by design, while the developer wants to talk APIs, and the CISO at the same time is talking about encryption. And all three of these teams might be trying to achieve the exact same thing, which is to protect the data, but they have trouble communicating because they're using different words. You can also end up with contradictory truths because different departments are using different definitions for the same thing as well. So to a CISO, something like sensitive data might be an unencrypted password. But to a privacy officer, it actually means something completely different. It could be something like a person's political opinion. And so without shared definitions across teams, AI might be trained on protected data that security actually mistakenly flagged as public. And you can also see where problems might arise with that. You could also end up with some risks falling into kind of like a no man's land or a gap between departments because no one knows who owns what. No one is willing to take ownership. So, for instance, who owns algorithmic bias? Cybersecurity might think that it's a data science problem, while data science might think that it's a legal problem, and legal at the same time might think it's a technical problem. So you have different teams kind of pushing the problem around, and in the end, it just ends up not getting addressed. So these gaps are where liabilities could hide. And last but absolutely not least, you could end up wasting a ton of resources, right? So while the privacy team is working to restrict data access to comply with GDPR, at the same time, the AI team could be scraping that same data to train a model because there's no communication across the team. And the cybersecurity team at this time, it's possible that the team hasn't even vetted the third-party plugin that the AI team is using to scrape that data. So you're handling tasks completely separately instead of as a unified team with a unified process and unified goals. You fix one problem and you end up creating three more. At this point, you're just moving the risks around instead of managing them.
Yeah.
You can also have projects moving from department to department, and that would keep projects stuck in administrative limbo. You could also have cases of last-minute redesigns because the privacy team realized on final review that the data collection process violates a consent decree. And you can also have different teams, like vendors and internal teams, get hit with like 3 different 200 question spreadsheets or questionnaires from 3 different departments. So this lack of communication, this lack of unification, it creates a waste of resources that probably ends up killing morale, and this could burn through investments real fast.
Absolutely. Yeah, I could see companies wasting a lot of time and money without harmonizing this. Now, if an organization attempts to harmonize these requirements, what types of benefits should they expect to see?
Um, Oh my gosh. Okay, so many benefits. Like I said, you without harmonization, you end up wasting a lot of resources. So with harmonization, you can save time and money. As I mentioned before about siloed departments, the sheer inefficiency wastes a ton of resources. So this harmonized approach would help to address those inefficiencies. And additionally, most regulations overlap quite significantly. So by using unified controls, you can stop asking developers the same questions 3 or 4 different times. It would also alleviate audit fatigue and lets your technical teams focus on building instead of just answering the same questions. You can also increase innovation speed. So what we have today in this siloed format, privacy and security act as brakes applied at the end of the process. But harmonization would move these to the beginning through privacy by design. And through this process, you can avoid 11th hour redesigns because the guardrails were built into the track starting from day one. You can mitigate risk much more effectively. So as I said, silos can hide in those gaps between departments. Harmonization would close these gaps, and catching these early would prevent brand damaging headlines and massive fines. You can also surprisingly get better data quality for AI. So not surprisingly, but some people are surprised by this. So when you harmonize, the data governance team ensures that the data is clean, the privacy team ensures that it's legal to use, and the security team can ensure that it's protected. So this foundation, it actually ends up making AI models more accurate and less prone to hallucinations. So what you actually have is better quality, more efficiency, right? And I think last, you can absolutely gain a competitive trust advantage. I think that in 2026 today, transparency is absolutely a product feature. So proving that your AI is safe through a unified, cohesive framework will absolutely help you to build trust, not only with your investors and your clients or consumers, but also internally within your own team or board as well.
You sold me at less questionnaires. I think that so many people in IT and cybersecurity and even privacy and compliance just hate filling those out, and so many of them are just the same questions repeating and repeating, and you spend days on it, and you want to do your actual job instead. So I mean, just that is a huge win for everybody.
I relate. As a lawyer, I definitely vote for less of that kind of work, please.
Absolutely. So, Paul, when it comes to harmonizing governance, what types of requirements should we be trying to harmonize?
Ooh. Okay, so you can go, what types of requirements should we be trying to harmonize? Okay, so the key word here is requirements, right? And that's gonna vary based on who you are as an organization, right? It's going to vary based on where your principles sit. But let's take it at the kind of the highest level of operational granularity, which is what Esther was talking about with silos, right? We want to harmonize across those functional silos so that they're not silos anymore, so that they're integrated governance mechanisms, integrated governance arms, integrated governance departments. I mean, those are all fancy words of just saying people. Get people working together, right? So that could be just like a real game changer for a lot of organizations when you're trying to harmonize governance. And if you've got, I'm going to keep calling it a single pane of glass to look through as an organization, then people can all be looking in the same direction, right? You could go another level down on kind of operational granularity. You could dig a little bit deeper into those requirements, right? You could talk about, okay, so let's harmonize our governance and accountability processes. Let's harmonize our AI risk management processes. Let's make sure our controls around cybersecurity are in the same ballpark as the AI risk management folks and the governance and accountability folks. And you can go on into privacy and data protection, which is what we're on this podcast for. You could look at safety and ethics. And one day the safety and ethics department's going to be thinking about alignment and control theory, right? I'm currently writing a paper on a philosophy of AI, and I find myself talking about future internal states of alignment and control theory, and even referencing the baseline test from Blade Runner 2049, because at some point systems are going to be so not conscious but cognitive that they're going to be able to do our bidding. We're going to need to make sure that they're not destabilized. So safety and ethics needs to be harmonized. Compliance obligations need to be harmonized. Evidence and assurance requirements need to be harmonized. So you've got all of these areas within a business, and oftentimes people haven't got their fingers on more than 2 or 3 of them, sometimes even not even more than 1 of them. So that's one level of operational granularity. I could take it even deeper into talking about the difference between technical controls and legal obligations, right? But I think we'll stick there for a minute. We'll twist in a little while if we need to.
Absolutely. So when it comes to the ARISE framework itself, how does that model specifically harmonize the requirements across cybersecurity, data governance, AI governance, and compliance? Like, how does that work with this specific framework?
Okay. So we talked about the fact that this has been a kind of a passion project, right? This started as a passion project by Ryan Carrier, who's the executive director at For Humanity. Now, the ARISE framework didn't start with Ryan. The ARISE framework always started with Josh, our CEO. But this cross-framework mapping really kind of got going when Ryan, the executive director at For Humanity, and Josh, the CEO of Assessed Intelligence, they'd almost completed working together on the For Humanity cybersecurity governance certification scheme, as long with the working group, not just those two, but those two started to map cybersecurity protocols and controls. And that then started this passion project. Josh then took that work on, and then when he brought in myself, Esther, our chief strategy officer, Katie, our chief ethics officer, Laura, all of us as fellows at For Humanity, then that work continued, the mapping, the hours and hours and hours of thinking, okay, what is the intent behind an ISO control, right? Because it's all an aspect of perspective. Within ISO, you can read a clause and you can read it like 4 or 5 times. You're trying to work out, what are they trying to get me to do?
Yeah.
In For Humanity, you read one criteria and it says, go to that room there, open that box, look at this, record what it says, make sure it doesn't exceed your risk appetite or your risk threshold. Go back and report that into your AI risk committee. Make sure the ethics committee knows about it. Be 100% sure that the cybersecurity lead has knowledge about this, and then report it up through your enterprise risk management. Right? It's so robust. So that mapping process, you can look at an ISO control and you can say, or a clause, you can say that fits in on 10 different places. How do we map that across different criteria? So that was the job behind harmonizing requirements. Once that work has been completed, at least across half a dozen mappings, which is where we've got today with the ARISE framework, and there'll be more in the future. But now we're at this point, you can go to that ariseframework.com and you can use, for example, the framework overlap view, and that will show you all the different frameworks and regulations that ARISE maps to. So that's how it does it. It takes the intent of those clauses, of those criterias, of those annex controls, of those stipulations, of those attestations, and it says, if you do this, 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 and this, you will meet this, 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 and this. Right? So, you can go to you can go to like privacy program, right? Go to the control privacy program, which sits under manage, or I think it's govern. In privacy program, there are 6 different ways for you to do a data protection impact assessment. 6 different framework mappings that says this is what you need to do. Now, a data protection impact assessment doesn't need 6 different ways to do it, but when you've got 6 different professionals who might be thinking about a data protection impact assessment, or there might be 6 different frameworks that are saying you need to have robust data protection, you need to have data management, you need to have data governance, there are 6 different approaches that people are taking to try and get to the same end. Right? So it's really about trying to just bring all of those controls together so that 6 different people are working on 6 different ways to boil an egg.
Yeah, I really like that you can narrow it down by topic or area. So I could narrow down like training, or I could narrow down the privacy program or DPIAs. If somebody comes to me as a compliance professional and says, this company needs to be compliant with ISO 27001, I'm going to throw up. There's so much that I need to do, versus with this framework, I can just say, okay, I'm going to focus on this particular area right now.
Yeah.
And I'm going to select the frameworks that I need, and it's going to tell me exactly what I need to do. So I don't spend all that time researching. I don't spend any money because this is publicly available. And I can know exactly what I need to do in the area that I'm working in right now, which makes things so much easier and so much less overwhelming.
Sure.
So when you say that a model is operational, what does that look like? Is it a set of controls, workflows, metrics, operating procedures, or something else?
Sure. Yeah, you're pretty close. So we could take a couple of controls, right? I'm gonna go down, deep down. I'm gonna go straight to thresholds, and I'm gonna talk about metrics, because those are 2 controls within Arise. It's not just about policy documents, and we're back to that whole kind of that governance theatre topic again, right? An operational model means you have defined quantitative limits. You have automated guardrails that trigger alerts or block actions or flag things or make sure somebody looks at something, make sure somebody approves something, make sure the human in the loop, reviews it, even if it's post hoc. So, it's about making sure that if limits are crossed, because you can't have an operational model that stops all limits or thresholds being breached, right? But if limits are crossed, that somebody or something knows about it and can start to react to it, hopefully almost immediately, but within a reasonable amount of time. It's also about setting these things in advance so that you know what you've set. And if I put my For Humanity hat on for a minute, when we do audit criteria drafting, we often speak of metrics, measurements, thresholds. I can even put that in inverted commas, it gets said so often. Metrics, measurements, and thresholds, and these need to be aligned with your organization operating parameters. Right? So a simple analogy might be that you have temperature as the metric, Celsius is the measurement, and a deviation of more than 4 degrees from what you've set as an acceptable level is the threshold. So this would be the metric, the measurement, and the threshold for keeping a server room cool, for example. Right? On a macro scale, a risk management level, for instance, many organizations look at critical operating parameters from the lens of, say, risk tolerance and risk appetite. So you set a risk tolerance, you set a risk appetite, and you say, okay, all of the risks that we identify that fit into that risk appetite, if anything exceeds a threshold or breaches the threshold, we need to know about it because it might just upset our risk tolerance. So that whole process also fits in. So that's about being operational. Another key part about being operational is that you take away that governance theatre that we've spoken about before. I just posted on LinkedIn, a week ago, maybe less, an article called, the check engine light, right? You get these check engine light approaches to governance that you can get from a lot of GRC platforms, which is, you get the flashing signal on the dashboard that says, go check the oil pressure. You're not entirely sure what you need to do. I mean, okay, fair enough. I know how to check an oil pressure, but my missus doesn't. Right? So if she's in control of the car, then she has to take it to a garage, and she has to find the right garage, and she has to know who to ask, and blah, 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 right? So if you don't have somebody that's ultimately able to drive the car, then a check engine light is not going to get you there. And now I follow a guy called Russell Parrott on LinkedIn, and I recommend people have a look at his stuff. He wrote something called the Standardized Definition of AI Governance. I'm not going to say it is the Standardized Definition of AI Governance, but he calls it that. And he compared the structural tests I've compared the structural tests that he wrote with the criteria within For Humanity's certification schemes. And these are the only two publications that create a structural integrity to governance. They create the foundations that you just cannot miss, right? That's where Arise kind of sits in, and that's what an operational model does. You always know where you are with an operational model. You always know where you failed. And in the future, when regulators, even competitors try and hold you accountable, and I say competitors because the EU AI Act is a product safety law, when they try and hold you accountable for your product, you need to be able to go back to your controls and say, we did this, and this, then, here, and here. We tried, we've made our best effort to govern this system. Right? That's an operational model.
Yeah. Not to
feel free to edit that down.
So not to take us on a tangent, but my grandfather thinks that the check engine light is just, and I quote, he says it's diagnostics and electronics. So his car had a check engine light, and I was driving it, and I was like, Grandpa, this has a check engine light on it. He's like, don't worry about it. It's just diagnostics or electronics. 5 days later, my husband and I are driving behind him, and he just stops, and the car's dead and has to get a tow. And I had to explain to him that a check engine light is not just something that you ignore. You have to actually look at it. You have to use the car reader that a lot of people have. We have one of those. You have to take it to the shop. You have to actually figure out what's wrong, because this isn't just some random light that turns on. You actually have to do something about this.
As someone who's owned a 1965 VW Beetle, I know exactly what a check engine light means. I'm not any good at reacting to it, but I know what it means.
Yeah, as somebody who used to own a Jeep, I know what a check engine light is too.
Yeah.
So Esther, let's get on to you right now. As we start this new year, what do you think will be the biggest drivers pushing companies towards integrated governance?
That's a good question. I think that this year in 2026, we've moved away from watching and waiting to more active enforcement. So now we have the grace periods for major regulations like the EU AI Act that are now officially over. And what we're seeing now is the first wave of heavy fines and mandatory audits. And we have regulators that want technical proof, like deepfake watermarking and machine readable disclosures. And so I think that integrated governance is probably going to be the only way forward to produce the technical documentation these laws now demand. I think there's also simultaneously a move away from policy to evidence-based accountability. So I would say the trust us era is now over. The trust us statement is no longer going to be a valid compliance strategy moving forward. So as I said, auditors and enterprise customers are going to demand real-time proof. They want to see your data maps, your bias testing logs, your kill switch protocols. They're going to want to see the evidence. I think there's also simultaneously and probably relatedly, right? They're all working together in tandem. There's increasing investor pressure to comply with ESG principles, ESG, environmental, social, and governance. So I think that at this time, investors view poor AI governance as a material financial risk, and AI ethics is actually now a core pillar of ESG reporting. So harmonized governance would help turn responsible AI, this big thing called responsible AI, into a competitive advantage for attracting capital. It's not just an ethical thing anymore, even though that's also very important. It's also an investment savvy thing. So at this time, I think I would say the biggest driver is no longer just the fear of applying. It's more than that. In a world of agentic AI and deepfakes, integrated governance is going to be the only thing that keeps a company's reputation and its data from spiraling out of control.
Yeah, may I just add, and Esther quoted investors, and that's a massive one, but also insurance companies. Insurance companies are starting to opt out of offering policies if you're running AI systems, whether you're deploying or providing. Now, that's a hugely generalized statement. I'm not saying that, I'm not saying that all insurance companies are doing that, but some certainly are. So policies might be harder to come by, and even, direct lawsuits against officers of companies is starting to happen, as we've seen. So I think that's also going to push companies towards thinking about, okay, how do we do this better?
I think it's good that we're moving past the trust model into the verify model, because to be honest with you, these companies cannot be trusted. I mean, we've been shown time and time and time again, how when you have more lax rules and regulations and laws, companies just say, oh, we're doing our best and your privacy matters to us and we really care about this. No, they don't. I mean, through all the lawsuits and everything, we've seen that they don't. So having a verification model definitely inspires more trust with consumers, because this isn't just, oh, we'll take Mark Zuckerberg's word for it. It's more like, okay, here's what they actually did. And I think that's very important.
Absolutely.
If you were advising a privacy leader who wants to mature beyond a siloed program, what's the first actionable step that they should take?
The first actionable step that they should take is absolutely listen, I would say. Go on a listening tour outside of the legal department. Like I said, legal departments tend to be pretty siloed, and I think that's how lawyers tend to be. We speak a different language, we're a different creature, right? We are very much invested in our legalese. But I would say go on a listening tour. Sit down with the head of data science or the CISO. Ask what is the one thing about our current privacy process that slows you down the most, and try to identify the friction points. And once you've done that, I think that you've found your first opportunity for harmonization. Usually, I think that it's probably just a redundant form or confusing policy, which is relatively easy to fix, and that's an easy way to get started. So fix that first, and you'll build the first cross-functional trust, which is absolutely necessary, right? I think everything begins with trust. You have what you need to launch a fully harmonized model.
Awesome.
If I could just add to that, we're starting to publish what we call Arise stories in a video format on our YouTube channel. You will see them also published on LinkedIn. And one of the Arise stories that's going to come out in the next couple of weeks is called Doing a Gap Analysis. So anybody, a privacy leader who wants to take a step beyond a silo program, could do a gap analysis using the Arise framework to identify perhaps where some of the gaps are in that harmonized governance structure.
Yeah, that's really great. Yeah, definitely look at the model, label it, see what it says, select the things that you want to do, and just look at it and read it and see where you're at. And I think a gap analysis is a great way to see what you're missing, because it's hard to know what you're missing when you're deep in the trenches of doing this every day. So my last question for the both of you, where can people learn more about your new model, your company, and yourselves?
AssessedIntelligence.com, AriseFramework.com, and we are both on we're both on the Assessed website, and we're on LinkedIn as well. I imagine you'll provide links to Sonata. I think if you want For Humanity, I think it's forhumanity.info. Is that right? Paul, can you verify?
Forhumanity.center.
Oh, center. My bad. Forhumanity.center.
Yeah, the non-English way of spelling center, obviously.
Awesome.
The American way, yes.
Yeah, RE. My mind
No,
all.
not worry, ER.
Oh, it's ER. Okay. Whenever it's
Um,
RE, I can't. My mind just shuts down. I can't process that.
I would also like people to sign up and join us for our Arise Framework webinar launches. The US webinar is 3 p.m. Eastern on the 21st of January on our Vimeo channel, so that we can have multiple guests and multiple hosts. And then the EMEA launch will be on the 27th of January at 5 p.m. Central European time, again on that Vimeo channel. So the links are all over the internet on LinkedIn. Hopefully, Donata, you'll be able to share some of those as well. We've got links to register for the US version and the EMEA version. First 100 people get in the door. So if your name's not down, you're not coming in, as the old song says.
It is free. Free to
Free.
register.
Everything Assess does at the moment seems to be free. That will change. Yeah.
Well, while it's still available for the public, definitely check it out. And even if when it does become paid, definitely check it out because it's a really, really cool tool. I definitely can see how it's very, very useful for people. So,
So,
so Paul and Esther, thanks so much for taking the time and coming on today.
Yeah, this was super fun. Thanks so much for having us.
it's been a pleasure. Thank you. It's been fun.
Awesome. And then for our listeners, make sure to subscribe to Privacy Laws so that you don't miss our next episode.